साड़ी पर वैसे बहुत अच्छी बात है, ऐसी बात नहीं है। यहाँ पहले साड़ी बहुत
How we feel? Oh yeah, every day. Take it. Good. जरूर. What do you want, Prasad? क्या चाहिए आपको? प्रसाद देखना, डेट्स है, फ्रूट्स है, और जो स्वीट है, जो चाहिए वो आपके लिए। एक मिनट ये दो टिक्का, टिक्का पास, दूसरा बाजा
वो मैंने अंदर
Okay, well, we're going to start in single beat and after one time around. Just right now, try it for 1 second. I'll tell you. You see my students? See you paint proud and Saga. I'm proud of you guys. And Sonia is the teacher. Students.
बोलो लाडली लाल की
कंप्यूटर वाला बंद करो चैनल आरती हम प्यारी यमुना निकटतस्थित वृंदावन कानने महारम्ये कल्पद्रुमतल भूमौ चरणं चरणो परिस्थाप्य तिष्ठन्तं घननीलं स्वतेजसा तेजसा भासयन्तमिह विश्वम् पीताम्बरपरिधानम् चन्दनकर्पूरयुक्तसर्वाङ्गम् कर्णपूर्णनेत्रम् कुण्डलयुगमण्डितश्रवणम् मन्दस्मितमुखकमलम् सकौस्तुभोरामणिहारम् वलयाम्बुलीयकान्त्या नुज्ज्वलयन्तम् स्वलङ्काराम् गलविलुलितवनमालम् स्वतेजसा पास्तकलिकाम् गुञ्जार्वालिकलितम् गुञ्जान्विते शिरसि गुञ्जानं सहगोपै गुञ्जान्तर्वर्तिनं नमत मन्दारपुष्पवासित मन्दारनिलसेवित परानन्दम् मन्दाकिनीवृतपदम् नमत महानन्दकम् महापुरुषम् सुरभिवलयम् सुरभिक्षपणमहा वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की, श्री रासेश्वरी राधा रानी की, जगत गुरु श्री कृपालु जी महाराज की, श्री राधा गोविंद धाम की जय जय श्री राधे जय श्री राधे जय जय श्री राधे। ब्रह्मा कस्तूरी प्रियतम मनललाट पटले स्वरस्थले नाभागे वरुणोक्तितं करतले वेदूतरेदं चमत्तावली परिवेदितो विजयते गोपाल चूड़ामणि कोई नहीं one point Manjira. There's some over on that.
coffee. बोलो साकेत बिहारी श्री राघवेंद्र सरकार की। Radhe Radhe. Welcome back to our Navratri celebrations and series of lectures on Ramayana, where I'm explaining the Leelas of the Ramayana, Ram Katha. So I've been explaining to you the importance, first of all, of Shri Ram's Leelas. It's not something to be taken lightly. Ramayana tells us, Jahan lagi sadhan ved bakhani, sab kar phal hari bhagati bhavani. The reason for all the practices of our Vedas, and there are so many various spiritual practices, the reason for adopting any of those spiritual practices is only one: to develop love in your heart for God. Tav pad pankaj priti nirantar sab sadhan kar yah phal sundar. There's only meant to be one beautiful outcome to any spiritual practice. The true phal, the true reward for any spiritual practice, is developing love for God in our heart, developing bhakti. So we have to take the Leelas in the right way, because Tulsidas ji writes, Ram dekhi suni charita tumhare, jad mohahi buddha hohi sukhare. There are two ways to take the Leelas of Ram or of any form of God: the wrong way and the right way. So hearing about, seeing, or reading about your Leelas, ek jada, a fool, mohahi, he becomes deluded under this illusion that, oh Ram, you are an ordinary man. And he takes the Leelas in the wrong way. He looks at Ram as an ordinary material being, and he judges all of his actions according to the way we would judge an ordinary person. But Buddha hohi sukhare, the wise devotee, lovingly reads, listens to, and remembers those Leelas, and thereby experiences the true bliss that is imbued in those Leelas. Ram is Satchidanand, he is the very form of divine happiness, and his Leelas are Satchidanand. His Leelas are also imbued with divine bliss. So to taste that divine bliss is the point of listening to or reading or thinking about Ram's Leelas. not for any kind of intellectual analysis. I've been relating some of the Leelas of Balkand to you, and yesterday I told you about Vishwamitra coming and requesting from King Dashrath if he could take Ram and Lakshman to help him because some demons had been terrorizing all of his spiritual practices and trying to impede him from worshipping the way he likes to. So Dashrath ji was reluctant, but he didn't want to say no to a great saint like Vishwamitra. So he surrendered his boys, Ram and Lakshman, to Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra took them. They killed all the demons that were harassing his yajna and his puja. And they made their way to Ayodhya. On the way, they passed a beautiful ashram, and there was a rock there. Inside the rock was Ahilya, who had received a curse that she had to enter into this rock. See, a soul can also enter a stone or a rock. That's part of achar. We talk about char, achar. So in the 84 lakh yoni, the 8.4 million different forms, bodies that a soul can enter into, some are char, meaning chalne wale. Animals, birds, fish, lizards, snakes, all of these living beings can move around. And some are achar, meaning those that can't move, like trees, plants. And one of those yoni is actually stones. So believe it or not, a soul can actually receive a quote-unquote birth as a rock. Not as a mountain. A whole mountain doesn't have a soul, but individual rocks may have a soul in there. So it's possible for a soul to enter into a stone. Now, Ahilya, who was the wife of a great sage, she actually got a curse that even though she was born as a human, she had to enter into this stone. So when Ram came, he knew, and he graced her by putting his charan, putting his lotus foot onto that stone, and then she came out of the stone in her human form, and then went to rejoin her husband. So this happened on the way. Then they continued, they went to Mithila, and as I told you yesterday, when they entered Mithila, which is the town of King Janak, where Janak, his queen Sunayana, and of course Sita ji all lived. So when they entered, it created a big commotion because no one had ever seen such a beautiful form as Ram and Lakshman. And in fact, even King Janak was amazed. Let me tell you something about King Janak. He is already a saint. He's a God-realized saint, but up until now, he has always worshipped God as formless. And his mind is so absorbed in formless God, in the bliss of formless God, just seeing nothing but God everywhere he goes, not seeing God in his personal form, but just the whole world is God for him, divine truth. And his mind is absorbed in that bliss so much that he was called Videha, which means he had no physical consciousness of his body. His mind was completely absorbed in God. So even if he put his hand on a flame or something, he wouldn't even realize it, because the only thing in his mind was God all the time. So he was at such an elevated state, but something amazing happened to him when all of a sudden Ram and Lakshman, who had entered the city, came in the area where King Janak was, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He says, इनहि विलोकत अति अनुरागा परबस ब्रह्म सुखहि मन त्यागा सहज विराग रूप मन मोरा चकित होत जिमि चंद्र चकोरा. He says, my mind was the very picture of like a placid lake, the very form of dispassion, no attachment anywhere to anyone, just my mind is only in God. But what happened? That formless God now has appeared before me in a form. So the Brahm that I thought was only formless, and I was experiencing a oneness with him, now something amazing happened. I can see him face to face. He just walked up to me. I can see his limbs. I can see his beautiful smiling face. I can see his gait as he walks in a very charming style. So this is so much more exciting, so much more enriched in terms of blissfulness, that my mind has been forcefully drawn. My mind was completely absorbed and content in the bliss of formless God. And now it's been forcefully pulled towards the divine beauty of Sri Ram. Barabasa Brahma Sukhahi Mana Tyaga. Barabas, it means under the force of the attraction of Ram's beauty, my mind was powerfully attracted to him and has forever renounced that bliss of Ram's formless aspect. Now I want to see him only. Chakita hota Jimmy Chandra Chakora. Now, like the Chakor bird watches the moon unblinkingly. The Chakor bird has such love for the full moon that when the moon rises, the Chakor bird watches it come over the horizon, and the whole night unblinkingly watches the moon go across the sky until it sets. In the same way, I can't take my eyes off of Sri Ram. This is also part of the reason for Ram's avatar. We talked about his having many, many reasons. Hari avatar he tujhe hi hoi, idamitham kahi jaat na soi. It's impossible to enumerate all of the reasons for his avatar, but this is another one of them. To illustrate to the world through practical, real life examples that there's something very special in Sakar Brahm, which is not manifested in Nirakar Brahm. You know what is Nirakar and Sakar Brahm? Nirakar, formless, unmanifest. God, but with all of his qualities, unmanifest. So one of God's qualities is beauty. As Nirakar Brahm, as formless God, in whom Janakji was initially absorbed, there's no beauty. How can something without form have beauty? There's no, you can say another quality of God, another guna of God is kindness. But Nirakar Brahm cannot be said to be kind. That guna is also dormant. To be kind, you have to be able to gaze kindly upon someone. With what face, with what eyes would Nirakar Brahm gaze kindly upon someone? With what hands would Nirakar Brahm take a soul and hold them like a mother would hold a child, showing kindness? With what power would Nirakar Brahm grace a surrendered soul? All of these qualities are dormant. So Nirakar Brahm is the same Ram, but with all of his powers and qualities dormant. And the same Nirakar Brahm is Sri Ram, but with all of his qualities manifested. So that's why there are many examples in our history, like Shukdev Ji, Jagadguru Shankaracharya, and of course King Janak, and even Sanakadik Paramahansa, who initially were experiencing the bliss of Nirakar Brahm, what we call Brahmanand, and then they later got to experience Premanand, the loving bliss of the personal form of God, Sakar Brahm. And having tasted that, they never went back. Their mind never desired to even think again about Brahmanand. They ever remained dube hue, drowned in that loving bliss of Sakar Brahm. So this instance with King Janak showed this to the world, that Ram is Bhagwan, and the bliss in his personal form is something very high, supreme. After that, I already related to you the episode of Ram and Lakshman leaving early in the morning to go and gather flowers in that beautiful garden and having a chance meeting with Sita and her Sakhis. And then Sita going and praying to Goddess Gauri and receiving the boon that she would have Ram as her husband, and Ram picking the flowers and then coming back and giving them to Guruji Vishwamitra, and his Guruji also blessing him that he would be able to marry Sita. And after that, Ram and Lakshman going to the Dhanush Yagya and seeing all the princes fail in lifting the great bow of God Shiva. Even Ravana was there, and he also failed miserably, just like all of them. When Ram rose and went to pick up the bow, it was like, Tulsidas Ji says, it was like an elephant snapping a lotus stalk. The stalk of a lotus flower, very supple. You just bend it and it snaps like that. So when he effortlessly lifted that bow, and then to string a bow, because you have to have tension in it, right? The bow is straight, you have to bend it and get the loop of the string over it. So as Ram was bending it, just snapped. It was a huge, thunderous, tumultuous sound that was caused by the breaking of God Shiva's bow. Now, there's a very famous doha, chaupai actually, which describes how people saw Sri Ram as he rose and he came towards the bow. Everybody actually saw him differently. Jati rahi bhavana jaisi, Prabhu murati dekhi tin taisi. This is something very special, very unique to God's divine body. Not everyone sees God the same. Even when he's taking avatar, he's specifically here. You can see him with your eyes, but it depends what kind of eyes you have. Do you have material eyes? Do you have divine eyes? If you have divine eyes, how do you relate yourself to God? If you have material eyes and a material mind, how pure is your mind, or how impure is your mind? So when Ram arose and he went and he picked up the bow, everyone was seeing him differently. In this world, everyone can basically agree, right? You'll see someone, you'll say he's got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and people would generally agree that yes, he's a handsome fellow, or he's just average looking. No, he's not very good looking. Everyone would generally agree. You can all see the same features. It's not so with God's body. God's divine body. Chidanandamaya deha tumhari vigat vikar jana adhikari. Because God's divine body is made of divine substance, it's made of what we call Sat Chit Anand, which is the divine substance, the very form of bliss. So Jana Adhikari, only an Adhikari, only a qualified individual can actually see his real divine form. Tribhir gunamayair bhavayirebhi sarvamidam jagat mohitam nabhijanati mamebhyah paramabhyayam. Shri Krishna explains in the Gita that those who have not attained God, who have not received a divine mind and divine eyes, they are under the influence of Maya. And Maya has the three qualities, Sattva, Raj, Tam. And those three qualities influence our perception of everything. So since our mind is made of these three qualities, good, selfish, and bad qualities of Maya, therefore, whatever mood or whatever mode our mind is in, Sattvic, Rajas, or Tamas, that's what we cast upon the world. Just like if you have Pilia Rog, if you have jaundice, a perfectly white paper will look yellow to you because you have an illness. So you're perceiving something incorrectly. The paper is not white, it's yellow. Similarly, even if you were to meet Ram face to face, let's say you were there in that Dhanush Yagya at King Janak's Mithila, you were sitting there and you saw Ram. Would you have seen him as the Supreme Lord, the very form of Sat Chit Anand? No. Your mind, just like you would see if you had jaundice, you would see the white paper as yellow, you would see Ram's divine body as material. So you'd see him as Sattvic, if you were Sattvic, if your heart was more pure. You would see him as Rajas, if your heart was more impure, and you would see him as Tamas, if your mind was extremely impure. It all depends on the quality of your heart. And is Ram Sattvic or Rajas or Tamas? No, none of the above. He's beyond, he's Nirgun. He's beyond my qualities. Therefore, we are unable to perceive him in his true form. It is said that there were some demons there in the form of princes. Now, according to their impure minds, how did they see Ram? One demon saw Ram having 4 heads and 8 arms and looking very scary. So he's pointing out to his friend, see him? Are you seeing this? And he describes what he's seeing. And then his friend says, no. He has 6 heads and 12 arms and 12 legs. And another one beside them says, do you guys even know how to count? He has 20 heads and 40 arms and 40 legs. In this way, everyone was seeing him differently. Just like when Shri Krishna entered the Colosseum to fight against those wrestlers when Kans had invited him to come. Mallanam Shanir Nrinam Naravara Strinam Smaro Murtiman Gopanam Swajano Satang Chitibhuja Shasta Swapitro Shishu Mrityur Bhojapater Virad Vidusham Tattvam Param Yoginam Vrishninam Paradevateti Vidisho Rangangatah Sagraja. Some saw him because there were some of Krishna's sakhas, some of his gwalbals from Braj who had come. How did they see him? As their best friend. His father, Nanda Baba, was there. How did he see him? As his own son. There were some evil kings there, they saw Shri Krishna as a stern ruler who would punish them for their crimes. Kans was there, he saw Shri Krishna as death personified and he was terrified. He's going to kill me. The saints who were there saw Shri Krishna in his actual divine form as Supreme God, the form of bliss, and the yogis who had surrendered to God as being formless truth, they didn't even see Shri Krishna having any form at all. They saw him just as a bright divine light. And the wrestlers saw him not as a small 11-and-a-half-year-old boy. No, they saw him as a steel-bodied, muscular wrestler who was going to fight against them. So everyone saw him according to their own mind. Only the ones with divine eyes saw him as he actually was. So this is a special quality of God's divine body. The same thing happened when Ram came to lift the Dhanush. Anyway, I explained to you that he broke it and Sita ji put the mala on him. And after that, everyone was happy. But then some of those kings, some of those princes who had not been able to lift the bow, they were getting jealous. And they're looking at Ram and Lakshman and saying, these are just a couple of boys. Why should we let Ram have Sita? No, we should kidnap her and run away with her. So all this talk started happening, and Sita and her mother and everyone's listening. Oh, what's going to happen? So just then, something even more frightening happened. Parashuramji showed up. Parashuram is an avatar of Ram himself. Ram himself comes as Parashuram, but he had come before, and he was still on the earth as Parashuram, and he was on the earth as Ram at the same time. Now, Parashuram is, if you ever see him, he appears to be quite fearsome. Just even if he's in a good mood, he still has a face that would make you tremble. Because, you know, some people, just their brow is always furrowed. Their eyebrows are always knit. Their eyes always look like they're burning with anger. Even when he's relaxed, he looks like that. Add to this that he carries a big axe in his hand, and he's got bow and arrow in the other one, and he comes in covered in ash and wearing just a deer skin, and his meditation has been disturbed by the tumultuous sound, thunderous sound of God Shiva's bow being broken. And he himself is a devotee of God Shiva. So he comes in, he sees what's happened, that the Dhanush is broken, and he says, who broke God Shiva's bow? Lakshman couldn't help himself. He says, I've broken so many toy bows as a child. You never came and scolded me for any of those. So what if another little trifling bow has been broken? What's the big deal? Ho ho. So Parashuram is getting heated up now. He has quite a long exchange with Lakshman, and Ram is just standing there, and Lakshman is, it's Lakshman's nature also. He wants to stand up for his brother, but at the same time he knows his brother is very good natured and wouldn't want him to fight for no reason. So he's very sarcastically talking in this way with Parashuram, and Parashuram is getting more and more incensed listening to his talks. And he says to King Janak, or he just says in general, who has called all these princes here? And Janakji comes up to him and bows down and says, it is I, my lord. I've called all of them and I organized this, and he explained the whole situation. So then Parashuram, he's figured out that it's Ram who's broken the bow. So now Ram starts talking to him to pacify him. He's extremely humble. He's saying, "Oh, my Lord, we meant no harm. If I've done any mistake, if I've offended you in any way, please forgive me." And he even goes to the extent of saying, because Parashurama has his axe lifted up like this, and Ram is standing right there in front of him. Ram says, "If it will pacify you, your axe is here. My head is here. Do what you need to. I'm yours. I'm your servant." So Parashuramji was somewhat pacified by these words, but he was still angry that Lakshman had been so insolent and that Ram had broken Shiva's bow. So in the end, Ram rebuked him, saying basically, enough is enough. Then Parashuramji sees Ram in his divine form, and he can't take his eyes off him. He's amazed by his beauty, and he realizes that this is himself. He's seeing. And he offers his bow, his own bow, to Ram. And he had received this bow from Vishnu, who of course is none other than himself. But this is the way things happen in Leelas. Vishnu had given this bow to Parashuram, and now Parashuram is saying, "Here." So he had been told actually that when you meet yourself in the form of Ram, you will know that your work here on earth is done. So feeling that, he offered his bow to Ram, and Ram didn't even have to grab it. He just put his hand out and the bow came automatically into his hand, and then Parashuramji knew. So he quietly went away. I mean, everybody came and bowed to him, and he quietly went away back into the forest and back into his meditation. So this had, before this had happened, all the princes were starting an uproar. But once Parashuramji came in, because he was famous for killing kings, so all those princes became very quiet, and they didn't start up again after that. And Sitaji had already garlanded Ram. So now the next step was to send for, because Ram and Lakshman were there with Vishwamitra, and the wedding had to happen. But before that could happen, they had to send word back to Ayodhya. So King Janak wrote a letter, a very humble and polite letter to Dasharathji, and he sent it with some messengers back to Ayodhya. So when they arrived, and of course King Dasharath was so happy to get any news of Ram and Lakshman. They'd been gone for months. So he read that, and when he heard that Ram was going to marry Sita, then he was beside himself with joy. He first went to his Guruji Vasishtji, and he showed him the letter, and he was so happy. Then he went to Kaushalya and Sumitra and Kaikeyi and showed them. Tulsidas Ji says they were like, if you see peacocks when it thunders outside, then they start yelling and singing and jumping around and dancing around. So the whole palace was in an uproar like this. And they quickly arranged to have a grand procession to go and join the wedding in Mithila. So there's quite a long description of the preparations for this and the whole procession heading to Mithila. And of course, when King Dasharath arrived there, he was received with great respect and honored by King Janak. And it is said that Sita, who normally didn't reveal her divinity, just like Ram normally didn't reveal his divinity, he acted like an ordinary man, and Sita acted like an ordinary woman. But on this day, she called the Siddhas. They are divinely spiritual beings, you can say, and they have many powers. So she called them because they are also her servants, seeing as she is Supreme Brahm. So they came to her and she instructed them, you go in personal form and you serve King Dasharath and all of our guests who have come from Mithila. who have come from Ayodhya. So in this way, the preparations began for the wedding. They made, I mean, you know, when we have a special occasion here, we spend, you might spend a couple of days decorating, right? If you have a special satsang or puja at your house, and you might set up tents outside and decorate them and put in a lot of effort. The whole city of Mithila was decorating and preparing the pavilion where the wedding was going to take place. So you can imagine what was it like. How was it decorated with flowers and jewels and gold and everything you can imagine. And finally, the day came when the wedding was going to take place. Ram came on his horse, just like bridegrooms do even now, even nowadays. So he came, and the whole city got to admire him, and even the Devtas and God Shiva and Brahma, everybody came and admired the beautiful dark blue form of Ram as he's riding on the horse coming towards the pavilion. So once he had reached and he had been seated, and Sunena had worshipped him according to all the Vedic rituals, done his arti and washed his feet. Then they sent for Sita ji. So Sita came with all of her attendants, and she joined them. They sat down and they began all of the ceremonies to get them married. So those ceremonies took a long time, but once it was done, then the Purohit took Sita's hand and put it in Ram's, like that, and said a few more mantras, and then pronounced them. That, of course, King Janak had given Sita to Ram, and they joined their palms, and then they tied, you know, the end of Ram's pitambar, the end of Sita ji's sari, and then they rose and they went around the fire. The whole beautiful scene got to be observed by all the residents of Mithila. After that, just like nowadays, you have a wedding reception after the ceremony is over. Same thing they had all that time ago. So this was, you know, the main family members were gathered, all the elders, and Ram and Sita are sitting side by side, and all the elders are around, and of course there's a huge feast with all the different kinds of foods, and they're feeding everybody, and everybody's talking, and all eyes are on Sita and Ram, young and old, are watching them. So in the midst of all of this, Sita, who is very humble by nature, very sushila, you can say, she wants to look at Ram, but in front of everyone, she's not just going to look directly at him. So she's stealing glances. Whenever she can, whenever she feels like no one's looking directly at her, she'll very quickly just steal a glance at Ram and then look down. And of course, hiding behind her Bhanga. Or she's wearing all kinds of jewels, right? She has bangles, and she has the karpatra, which is a big jewel that sits on the back of the hand like this and is attached by links to the rings. So these jewels and golden bangles and everything, they're reflective. Ram is sitting here, she's sitting here, and she can see his reflection in her jewels. So she's looking like this, and she doesn't want to move her eyes or her hand. So any way she can, she's trying to drink in the beauty of Shri Ram. Jagadguru Shri Kripaluji Maharaj often gives this example as another way of understanding the special sweetness which is there in Sakar Brahm, when God in a personal form is doing leelas and is visible like this. Nirakar Brahm. Would any such sweet leela happen of Sita trying to steal glances of Ram? And no, it's impossible. So then how can you compare the bliss of formless God to the bliss of the personal form of God? Both are unlimited, but the bliss of the personal form of God is enriched unlimited times by this, all of these possibilities that happen during the Leelas. So the festivities, even after the wedding day, went on for days. We don't even know how long it went on. Even King Dashrath didn't realize how many days was he there in Mithila. It was so exciting, and so everyone was enraptured. The wedding, and now being able to see Sita and Ram together. But eventually, King Dashrath felt that it was time to return to Ayodhya. So he made it known that he wished now to return to Ayodhya. And he took his leave from King Janak. And of course, there's a long description in the Ramayana of Sita leaving her family, saying goodbye to her father, King Janak, to her mother, Sunaina. How everyone felt so attached to her and how they couldn't bear to have her go. How she was given instructions by her mother, how to serve her in-laws, how to serve Sri Ram, how her father also gave her instructions, and how they sent many of her servants, her personal servants and her close friends who lived in the palace with her in Mithila. They sent them along with her back to Ayodhya. And eventually they left, again in another great procession, all the way from Mithila back to Ayodhya. And of course, when they reached Ayodhya, then again, all the residents of Ayodhya had been without the darshan of Ram for so many months. It re-entered Ayodhya. It was another huge festival. Now the residents of Ayodhya got to see Ram and Sita, the divine couple. And after some time had passed, and King Dashrath realized that not only the residents of Ayodhya, but even the residents of other kingdoms, and even those who could be considered his enemies, all of them loved Ram as much as he did and respected him. So one day he was looking in the mirror and he saw that he was getting some white hairs here by his temples above his ears. And he thought, you know, I've done everything I wanted to in my life. I've seen and experienced everything, but the one thing that's left is I haven't gotten to see Ram as the king of Ayodhya. And these hairs are telling me it's time for me to go. So he went to his Guruji Vashisht and he made his desire known. And Vashisht ji said, nothing could be better. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. So they decided that very quickly they would be crowning Ram as king. But of course, Ram himself had other plans. And with the will of Ram, the Devtas complained to Saraswati Mata, Sharada. Why? Because all those Devtas have descended as the Banners. I told you on the very first day. If Ram just becomes king and rules peacefully in Ayodhya, all those Devtas who took birth as monkeys with a desire to serve Ram, they'll never get a chance to serve him. So they went and complained to Saraswati Mata. Mataji, this Ram becoming king, we don't like this. No, this is a very bad thing. Please do something to prevent that from happening. Do something that causes Ram to have to leave Ayodhya. Saraswati Mata is saying, Hey Bhagwan, why are you asking me to do this? Come on me. They said, no blame will come on you. So then Saraswati Mata, also with the will of Ram, no Leela happens without the will of Ram. It's his divine Leelas. Whatever he wants to happen is going to happen. It's not like our life where our happenings of our life are subject to the whims of destiny. No, whatever happens in Ram's life is his will. He had a desire to go to the forest. He had a desire to visit all the ashrams of all the sages. He had a desire to go all the way down to the south of India. He had a desire to serve his devotees by revealing a greater variety of leelas. So with his will, Saraswati Mata went to Manthara, the hunchbacked servant of Kaikeyi, and twisted her mind against Ram, so that she just felt like, no, I don't want Ram as the king. My queen, Kaikeyi, has a son, Bharat. I want him to be king. I don't want to see Ram as king. Kaikeyi. And although Kaikeyi was initially horrified to hear what she was saying, gradually she was influenced by the talks of Manthara. Manthara is saying, don't you know Ram is Kaushalya's son? And your son is Bharat? Everything looks all happy to you right now. Right now you're being respected, your son is being respected, everything seems just great, but you wait, you mark my words, when Ram becomes king, Bharat will end up in jail. And you will be thrown out. So she kept convincing her, and eventually Kaikeyi became very fearful and decided, yes, you're right. What should I do? Tell me, what should I do? So Manthara said, King Dashratha owes you 2 boons, right? Use those boons to your advantage. And ask for such a boon that Ram will have to leave the city of Ayodhya and will not be able to become king. So you have to be smart about it, be subtle, use your wiles, go to the sulking chambers right now. The king will come and he'll notice you sulking and he'll ask you, what's the matter? Don't tell him right away. Keep sulking until he's begging you to find out what's wrong, and then you use the power of these boons that he's guaranteed you. You make sure that he swears on the name of Ram that he's going to give you whatever boon you ask for before you ask for the boon. Then he won't be able to back down. So having received these instructions from Manthara, Kaikeyi went to the sulking room and began that Leela. So what happened after that, we'll discuss that tomorrow. We'll do a few minutes of Kirtan and offer the bowl. Raja Ram 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 Sita Ram 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 Radhe Shyam 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 Sita Ram 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 Raja Ram 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 Sita Ram 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 Radhe Shyam 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 Sita Ram Raja Ram 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 Sita Ram 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 Radhe Shyam 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 Sita Ram 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 Raja Raja Ram 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 Sita Ram 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 Radhe Shyam 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 Sita Ram, Raja Ram, Raja Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Ram, Ram Sita Ram, Raja Ram, Raja Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Radhe Shyam, Shyam Shyam, Sita Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Radhe Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Radhe Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Radhe Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram. Ram Ram Ram, Sita Ram, Ram Ram, Radhe Ram, Ram Ram, Sita Ram, बोलो सियावर रामचंद्र भगवान की. We'll sing the Bhog Geet now. And tonight's dinner prasad is sponsored by Radha.